Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host Raider. And in this video, I kind of was looking around the emails again, and I had been specifically asked to maybe discuss how one would go about disagreeing with the effective date in which you were given on an evaluation. So, in the event that you were granted, and for whatever reason, you were assigned an incorrect effective date for that particular claim. Now, this is one of the top kind of error issues that are going around ever since the PACT Act came out. Is there's so many moving parts with the PACT Act that a lot of the effective dates are not intuitive, and they're very situational, conditional, and dependent upon the circumstances in which your specific claim, the evidence falls. So, I am kind of making an excuse right now for the Raiders, but let's say that truthfully, you were given an incorrect effective date. How would you, as the veteran, go about overcoming that and advocating for yourself and getting the accurate effective date applied? So the first way that a veteran could go about challenging an incorrect effective date would be, and the first thing I'm going to say is, you have to know for a fact that your effective date is incorrect. Okay. I'm going to start off this video by saying that if you are unsure as to whether or not your effective date is correct, you need to seek guidance on that. You do not wish to go swinging, at the VA if it's accurate, right? You don't want to, I hate to use the term poke the bear, but you don't want to poke the bear if you're unsure, right? You should be absolutely sure you are and be able to point to evidence in the manual that shows why you were given an incorrect effective date. But back to the video. How would you go about, potentially overcoming this? Now, the first way that you could do this is you could cite a clear and unmistakable error. Now, the reason why I had said beforehand that you need to fully, like absolutely know for 100% certainty that your effective date is incorrect, because in order to call a clear and unmistakable error, or a CUE, I call it CUNE, is that either the correct facts as they were known at the time were not before the adjudicator, which is not the case for the effective date. Now, a situation in which this could be true for effective date is, let's say that you were granted under, uh, you know, the direct theory, but you could have also been granted under like a presumptive theory that could have gotten a year prior, earlier effective date because of, the 38 CFR 3.400 requirements. So you could have gotten a year prior, or liberalizing law, you could have gotten a year prior, and they didn't apply that. Well, if you didn't have like a qualifying memo, I'm going to say like behind the scenes stuff right now. Like, let's say they didn't know that you were, a qualified veteran, like you didn't go, like they didn't know at the time that you went to Iraq or Afghanistan and could have been, um, they weren't before the adjudicator, but the facts were there, but they weren't before the adjudicator that you could have been granted presumptively, then this would be a situation in which you had to have a clear and unmistakable error. Maybe the adjudicator overlooked that theory where you were presumptive, you know, or some regulations or provisions were not applied correctly, right? Like you need to have this, it's got to be factual that the VA did not apply the intent to file, well, not intent to file, but the earliest effective date that they humanly could have. A lot of the times that I do see this, and it's on my brain, is intent to files were not applied correctly. So this is important. The error must be the sort which, had it not been made, would have manifested, changed. Okay, geez, who writes this stuff? Okay. The error has to be such that if the error wouldn't have happened, a different outcome would have been the result. So had they applied the laws correctly, you would have been given that earlier effective date. You can see it from space. It's so obvious. That's what this means. Swear with the people that write this. It's like they all have like English literature degrees from like, ancient like Shakespeare. I don't know. Sorry. Kind of grinds my gears a little bit. The determination must be based upon the record and the law that existed at that time. Okay, so this means you can't apply Pact Act law prior to the Pact Act being created. So you have to be mindful that even if the law is true now, you have to it had to be true then whenever the rating decision happened. So I don't know if you noticed, but this is a lot of things that you've got to line up, okay, in order to prove that there was a clear and unmistakable error that you were not given the earliest effective date. CUNEs are undebatable. It can't be debatable. It can't be like, it's potentially true that I could have gotten an earlier effective date. That doesn't stand. It will not pass the rater. It will not be empathetic. The rater will turn it down. It has to be undebatable. That's why you have to do research on these. That's why anytime that you do a clear and unmistakable error, the general consensus is that you have to have you should have, it's probably the better way to put it. You should have an attorney review these things because they have to be undebatable. So now, what happens with a clear and unmistakable error if you decide to try to use this mechanism to overcome I'll just call it an erroneous effective date? So a request for an earlier effective date. So what you would do is you would request it. Now a clear and unmistakable error does not have any kind of freestanding form that you use to do it. But you can do it on a 526. You can do it on an 0995 form. It's fine. Either one is fine. But you can't just say my effective date is wrong or I want an earlier effective date. You can't do that. You have to go back here and you have to actually go through each one of these bullet points and explain in great detail what M21 manual. Please do not cite case law if you can help it. Like, don't cite case law, cite the manual. This cites case law, but cite the manual to which that cites the case law, because once again, the rater is not going to, we don't go look at this for more information. Yeah, no, we've got the information. This is what's needed in order to actually say that there's a satisfactory, clear and unmistakable error. You have to go through each one of these bullets. Okay. Now, you have to you've got to go through, and although a VA cannot consider a request for an earlier effective date on a final adjudication decision, what this means is we can't just it's not like an increase claim where you're saying, hey, look, you kind of missed my earlier effective date. You have to call a CUNE in order to do that. Now, it seems annoying, and that's because it is, and it seems like a process that is much harder than it needs to be, and I definitely agree 1,000%. Okay. Now, how do we respond to a request for an earlier effective date? Okay, how does the VA respond? So this is going to be primarily the domain of the VSR, and because the VA has no authority to adjudicate a request, which means we can't make a decision on something that's already been decided. We can't overturn it unless you do like a supplemental claim on it or you allege a CUNE. It says that a 5103 notice is not required. This is mostly just for the VSR's checklist. If the claimant requests a revision of the effective date of a prior decision based upon a CUNE and specifies the factual and or legal error in the previous claim, then the case is to be referred to the rating activity. No development. It goes straight to them to just review to see if all of those laws and regulations that you had reported were actually actualized correctly. Now, what's the inherent problem with this? Okay. So the problem with this is you might get a rater who also doesn't understand the the effective date rules for your specific condition. If it's an easy one and they just screwed up because of fat finger syndrome, fair enough. But if it's a complex one, you might want a different human being other than a rater looking at it. So if you don't, and I'll get to that. I'll get to that here in a second, but I want to finish this point. If a request for an earlier effective date does not include all those CUNE specified factual error stuff, then send the claimant an earlier effective date and close the claim. So if you do not satisfy this particular criteria of articulating this in your claim as to the CUNE error in this format and in this structure, then what happens is they are going to deny your claim. Okay, they're just going to change the EP to a 400 and close it and clear it, close and clear. So here are some of the ways that you can these are the different effective date laws and regulations, like effective dates for presumption. Like if you're saying that, hey, look, the fact that my condition's presumptive and I was granted presumptively, but you didn't award me presumptively for it, because it had to do with the PACT Act or whatever rationale you're giving. There's a whole bunch of effective date rules and regulations here. I just, if you want to take a look at it, this is the kind of section of the manual that they're in. But coming back to my other kind of consideration, right? Like by this time in the video, you're probably like, wow, thanks, Raider. This is not helpful. This is actually the worst idea known to man because doing this clear and unmistakable error seems very, very challenging. And I'm not going to disagree with you. So there's a much potentially better way to go about it. And the better way has to do with potentially doing a higher level review after you receive a rating decision in which you have an effective date that you know for a fact was not applied correctly. Okay. Now, I stand by my statements that going through a higher level review, you have to know that they did the wrong thing and you've got to be able to point to it. And once again, do not point to case law, okay, or you will lose. And you will have a board rater on or a board dro on your hands who will look around at the rest of your claims. But this, if you know for a fact that all of your rating decisions are on the up and up and you've got no skeletons in your closet, then what I suggest you do, if you receive a rating decision in which you were given a known incorrect effective date, like you can swear on the Bible, incorrect effective date, I can point to this law right here that should have happened. Then what I would do is I would do a higher level review on it. And I wouldn't tell them that it has to do with, what I would tell them in my official statement is I disagree with the rating decision dated so and so and so and so. I don't believe that my claim was or my condition was evaluated correctly. And then that's all I would put, right? And then I would go for a informal conference. So that way you can talk to the DRO. Because if you say that it's due to I disagree with the earlier effective date, then they're going to direct you to the CUNE portion of it. Okay, they're going to direct you back to the CUNE portion of it. But if you get into the informal conference, you can go, yeah, I think that I wasn't 100% sure that like I was granted under the I'll just say like I was granted under the Terra theory for service connection, and I was diagnosed before the PACT Act came into effect, which is kind of a requirement for getting the year prior. So anytime a liberalizing law happens and you met criteria, which means diagnosed before the law went into effect, the liberalizing law, then you can get up to a year prior than whatever the data claim is or the intent to file. You can get a year earlier effective date. So let's say that the rater didn't do that. You could go here and just disagree with the rating decision, get into the informal conference, and then make your case to the DRO, who will love to hear about, like, okay, so the liberalizing law says that if I if I was diagnosed before the liberalizing law took effect, I can get a year prior effective date. Well, here's my document that shows that I was diagnosed a year prior to the at least any kind of, I was diagnosed 1 second before the liberalizing law took effect. I should get a year prior effective date. I don't know how to go about articulating that to you, Mr. or Mrs. Dro. That would be a more appropriate way to go about it, in my opinion. And the reason why is because the DRO will then raise the issue, like I talked about on my previous video. It's better to have the rater or the DRO raise the clear and unmistakable error than it is for you to do it. Because if you do something wrong, then you can be denied that clear and unmistakable error review. But if the DRO raises a clear and unmistakable error that they find because you just so happen to mention it during a informal conference, then that's fine. Then they will identify that and they will do a difference of opinion, or they will pull a clear and unmistakable error to revise the prior decision, because that's what they're supposed to do. They either do a difference of opinion or a CUNE. Why not make the DRO do it? Then you do it. I don't know about you. I've actually won one of these myself, but I have specialized experience. You don't. Do you need an attorney? Like, I might, rather than have an attorney write this up and still raise it to issue, to where a rater who might not be qualified to understand the full, minutia of the effective dates, right? Because a rater got you into this mess. Asking a rater to get you out of it might not be the best course of action. A lot of raters are good, right? A lot of raters would identify it. But for me, I like the path of least resistance. So in this situation, if I was arguing for an earlier effective date and I knew it was wrong, I knew the effective date they gave me was wrong and I could point to it, I would do the higher level review and make them call the CUNE, so that way I cut out all of this bureaucratic red tape. So I don't know if this video is helpful to you guys, right? Obviously, I have to do my cautionary statement of anytime you invoke a higher level review, you're dealing with powers and authority that are mystical, and they're not something to be used lightly. If you think gave you the wrong earlier effective date, then you are not to the point where you can do a higher level review. You have to know they gave you the incorrect earlier effective date, or earliest effective date they humanly could have. Now, and then you just roll the dice, and I would do this. It's one claim. It goes to one person, the DRO. It's a yes or no answer, and they'll fix it on the spot if they can find it. Versus this one, you have a VSR who can misinterpret what you say and deny your claim. They can do this thing where they do the EP. They don't see it's a clear and unmistakable error in their I want to say unqualified eyes, but they're not really qualified to determine whether or not there's a clear and unmistakable error, but they're asked to review for one. So they can just close your claim and deny you and give you the false sense that you are wrong. And you might not be wrong. It could just be that the VSR themselves don't understand the CUNE process, right? To know whether or not you successfully did a CUNE request. So they can erroneously deny your claim. So for my perspective, you do have these two different options to where you can use a clear and unmistakable error to resolve an issue or erroneous effective date award, or you can potentially, if you know it for a fact, submit for this. But keep in mind, the words you choose matter. If you go into a higher level review saying, I think my earlier effective date is wrong, then guess what? they're going to default back to this, that you are claiming a CUNE for earlier effective date. Because remember, the form is not specific. If you do it on an 0996 form, or yeah, 0996 form, if you do it on the higher level review form, they can still review that and say, oh, they're just doing a CUNE review, at which point in time it would be plugged right back into, it would be taken out of the higher level review process, and it would be reviewed as if it was a CUNE. So kind of a cheeky way to do it, but I just say, hey, look, I disagree with my prior rating decision. There's some things about it that I don't agree with, and I would like a higher level review, please, or informal conference. And then during the informal conference, talk to them about it. This is how I won one of my higher level reviews that I did. Is I just said, hey, look, I'm kind of just pointing it out there, but shouldn't this have been granted under so and so? Like the earliest effective date per this particular reference right here, this manual reference. And they went, you know what, you're right. And that's all you like. That is how much argument you should have with the DRO, is you should place everything before them and just go, hey, look, this manual reference right here says, I think it says that you should have, that I should have been granted under this at this time. And they'd be like, you know what, you're right. Or, you know what, actually, that's not right. Now, let's say that they don't agree with you. During the informal conference, you can have them hopefully explain to you why it doesn't meet criteria. And that's at least peace of mind. And I will at least take peace of mind, because if they explain it to you, then let's say something changes in the future to where the way the laws and the regulations are interpreted are different. Then knowing why they denied you, getting that explanation from them and taking notes on it and keeping those notes can help you to say, oh, look, the reason why they denied me beforehand has changed. So I might be able to go back and actually challenge that decision for that effective date. I mean, it's possible, right? Everything's possible, probable, but not certain. So that's about all I've got for you today. Now, what I would like to talk to you guys about, the pressing issues of the day, is that we have gotten to 4K subscribers. And I am blown away. We have rocketed up to 4K subscribers in about a month's time. And that is thanks to all of you guys, watching the videos, the comments, um, I am blown away by all the support. Um, I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling at this point in time, but my family are shocked. My kids think that I'm weird because this really makes me excited. It makes me excited that I'm getting the message out, that that people actually appreciate what I have to say, uh, and that means a lot to me. So, anyway, I'd like to thank all the members. We've had an influx of raiders and VSRs joining the ranks, and that is awesome. Once again, it's great. It's not required, guys. Same thing with the donations. The donations do help to get squeaky chair resolved, and hopefully, flaming hot computer resolved. But they're not required. My goal, like I said, is to do the advertisements. I know they're annoying, but they compensate. But I do appreciate it. I have been answering the emails. I probably answered 40 emails today, and I think I've got arthritis in my fingers because of it. But I'm doing my best with that, guys, and I'm going from back to front. So if you got something new, I do apologize, because it's going to take me a while to get there. Mostly because some of the answers I can do like a 2-sentence response, but some of them I've got to do like a full on, 2,000 word book report. And that takes a little bit of mental time and a little bit of research at times. But anyway, yeah. Once again, thank you guys all for the 4,000 subscribers. If you can, smash the like, share, subscribe, YouTubey things. I'm just going to call it YouTubey things. Tell a friend about it. If you've found anything that I've said meaningful, tell a friend. Maybe they'll find it meaningful too. I am trying to grow the channel. I mean, we are a small channel now, but hopefully we can get, 5,000, 10,000 100,000. Yeah, my kids have already. I have a bet with my children about whether or not we can get to 100,000, and if I can, then they don't get cars. It's kind of stupid, but yeah. Anyway, well, thanks you guys, and that's all I got for you today.